Can Jujutsu Kaisen beat the Shonen Classics? Let's find out. One Piece, Dragon Ball, and Naruto. All of these anime have one thing in common. They're widely successful and an important part of our childhood. The nostalgia, coupled with classic animation and straight-up killer fighting moves to ignite every bit of dopamine in your body, is something we will never forget. But a new contender is slowly taking the crown in terms of popularity, storyline, art style, animation, fighting scenes, the list goes on. This series is known as Jujutsu Kaisen, and it's already captured the hearts of millions of people from around the globe. So this begs the question, is Jujutsu Kaisen enough to beat the Shonen Classics, or does it get overpowered by Goku, Naruto, and Luffy? Starting with the main protagonists, when you first start watching JJK, one thing becomes clear. The main character, Yuji Itadori, should kinda remind you of the old shonen main characters. You might be familiar with Ichigo from Bleach. He was a very well-rounded character with unique abilities, which is why he attracted most of the audience to the series. Itadori does the same. He values his friends just like Ichigo values his. He would go above and beyond, going through the deepest, darkest depths of hell to protect his loved ones, rather than abandon them. To describe Itadori in one line, it would be that he's a great mix between all top 5 classical shonen anime. Itadori has a pure heart like Ichigo and a goofiness like Naruto or Luffy. His character design also resembles Naruto, and his abilities are a perfect mix of different series. Just look at Sukuna and then look at Zangetsu. Both have a similar personality, which is why fans love the series. These well-known and tested characters give viewers a lot of nostalgic vibes, which is one of the main reasons why JJK has become so popular. Whenever you start watching JJK, you wonder why it resembles to Bleach so much. That's where it gets interesting. Gege Akutami, the creator of JJK, said that his favorite childhood manga was Bleach. He would even sneak into his older brother's room to read the manga in 4th grade. As he grew up and created a series of his choice, he wanted the character to resemble Ichigo starkly, and by making a killer MC, it seemed like he created one of the most exciting ones we've ever seen. While Itadori seems like just another usual main character, he's far from it. He's a character full of color with a heart made of gold, and his will to protect humanity from curses is just wholesome. In other words, Itadori is probably the most complete MC regarding his personality when it comes to the main protagonists. He rivals the greatest shonen MCs, but if the main character is that good, what about its villains? For example, in Dragon Ball Z we had Vegeta, who took half of the fanbase from Goku and turned them into a villain lover. In Bleach we had Aizen, who captured the hearts of many female viewers and turned them into fangirls. Similarly, in Naruto we had dozens of villains, all equally attractive. But villains being attractive just doesn't cut it. They need to prove that they're worthy of providing a great challenge to our main character. And the classic shonen anime delivered, like Vegeta delivering his Gallic Gun attack. Now let's bring it back to the main anime, Jujutsu Kaisen. A lot of modern day shonen just don't cut it. We see a lot of new shonen villains who just don't hit the same. But when it comes to JJK, it's a bit different. It introduces us to characters like Suguru Geto, Sukuna, and Toji Fushiguro, who are the sole reason for bringing many fans into its world. Much like in classic anime, the villains change occasionally, but the main villain in JJK is Kenjaku, who was also found working on the back end. We also have many badass villains like Mahito, who made everyone hate his sole existence, give half of the fanbase traumas due to his crazy masochistic acts, like mercilessly killing human beings and turning them into curses. Then the way that Geto, the nicest boy, turned into a villain broke the hearts of millions around the world, who is an even bigger threat. He's quite attractive, which helps JJK retain the audience, but at the same time, he's unhinged like all the villains in the series. And that's where the list of badass villains continues with JJK. However, the whole anime runs around this narrative stating that the more fingers Itadori eats, the stronger he'll get, but the stronger he gets, the more Sukuna will take over his body. In the end, while JJK has some of the best villains you'll see in modern day anime, they don't involve much depth like the classics. In Naruto we had Madara, whose story, well, was quite dramatic, melancholic, sad, filled with rage, and too many other depressing emotions. In Hunter x Hunter we had Hisoka, who broke all the barriers of being a villain. He wasn't as intimidating in the traditional sense, but in a more zesty way. When we compare the old school anime villains to JJK's, it seems like the old school has an edge. JJK has badass villains, but the story is still developing, and it's an ongoing show, which just shows us that there's a lot of untapped potential. And if you thought the story ended there, not yet. In various anime and manga series, we have side characters. These characters can make or break the series. For example, we have Killua from Hunter x Hunter, which is arguably more loved than gone. In Attack on Titan, we have Levi, who stole the show so many times that people started thinking he was the main character. Side characters often steal the show and create a level of depth that main characters and villains just simply cannot. In Naruto there was Gaara, Neji, Jiraiya, Itachi, and dozens more. In Bleach we had the entire 12 squads, their captains and members, and the list just goes on. My Hero Academia is another amazing example of well-designed side characters. Each of these characters has something unique and they support the story unlike anything else. But what about Jujutsu Kaisen? Does it live up to its hype as the anime killer, or can it not compete with the shonen greats? Let's analyze who we've got so far. In JJK, aside from our main characters like Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi, we have other characters too. Kento Nanami was one of the first side characters to be introduced, and fans fell for his charisma, masculine stature, and beautiful design. Then we're introduced to Maki Zen, Aoi Toro, Toge Inumaki, and the list goes on. One thing that Gege Akatami has done great with is its variety of side characters.
Now we have to talk about the character who seems more important than Itadori, but he's really just a side character. Satoru Gojo is the crush of almost any anime girl due to his charisma, his height, his figure, and his abilities that could take over the entire anime universe. He's awesomely written and sometimes feels more important than the main character. For example, there was this time where Itadori was getting destroyed by a villain named Jogo, and then Gojo came in to save the day. We can even go as far as to say that he might be more important than the main character himself. That's because Gojo's overwhelming abilities makes him the strongest in the series. It just puts a whole new perspective on the importance of side characters. They might not be as extensive as the Dragon Ball series, but how well they're written is fantastic for the plot. For example, Maki's backstory is about how she abandoned her clan because of her sisterly bond and facing misogyny, and then the series follows her whole side story, which makes the anime more interesting. Similarly, each side character has a personality that makes you fall in love with them, making JJK one of the best series with fan-favorite side characters. But what's an anime without emotions? If you look closely enough, a shonen anime without emotional scenes can't even be called shonen. Would Naruto feel the same way if it wasn't for the popular sadness and sorrow theme? How would Attack on Titan hit with the same intensity without the scene where Levi got a breakdown after his team's encounter with a female Titan? Will Bleach look the same after the deaths of its many great characters? The short answer is no. For example, when Naruto is fighting Pain and Hinata comes to the rescue and Pain starts ragdolling her like a video game character, things got intense. In those moments, the right execution of music, animation, and emotions made the whole battle a masterpiece. Returning to JJK, this anime is filled with that. We mean completely filled with emotions. There have been many moments, like Yuji collapsing in front of Megumi after Sukuna ripped his heart out, Junpei's saddening transformation, or a host of other deaths that caused the fanbase massive sadness. JJK can be compared with the Shonen Classics in terms of emotional moments and vulnerable scenes, but it doesn't surpass any of them. We can consider it a total tie. So, what's the final verdict here? Does Jujutsu Kaisen beat the Shonen Classics and take the throne for being the best shonen ever? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon for future videos like these. But wait, did you see Panda Man in this video? Comment below where he is.